Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of 8. So 5 of 8, that means we're over halfway there. I guess like Friday or Sunday or whatever it was our halfway point. So we're on the downward slope of this class. Still got a lot to do, still a lot of information to cover, but heck, we're almost there. So hang in with it for another 3-4 weeks, and we'll be done. So this week, what are we doing? Well, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a sip of tea because I always have one in my hand. I would pause the video, but you know what? I just make these things and they are what they are. This week, just like last week, I'm not going to make video lectures on the chapter material. I don't really think there's a need. The material is pretty straightforward. I think you can get it from reading it and listening to the pronunciation and kind of explanation videos that come with this, and get there. So I'm not going to waste your time with lecture. I do, however, want to look back at the week 4 discussions, because you know what, I actually read these things. I think you guys did a really good job this week, so I wanted to highlight a couple of things, just to go over a few things, maybe expound upon them, whatever, spout my wisdom, or who knows. Alright, so let's take a look at this. So the week 4 discussion in chapter 6 and 7 there, I asked, what's the most important disease that you thought about, and this is completely up to you. Miss Hicks, she started us off talking about IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. Did a great job. All of you guys really did a really good job. And let me just stop right here. A lot of you guys picked similar topics, so I'm only going to discuss leukemia or lymphoma one time, or I'm going to discuss this or that. And I know you guys all talked about it, so don't feel left out that I don't single out your post, but I don't want to go over the same stuff a bunch of times. Save you guys some time. So anyway, Miss Hicks picked IBS. IBS is one of those tough ones, and she does a great job of describing a disease that has multiple etiologies, and we don't really understand the disease process or the diseases behind it. There's probably several processes behind this that can cause this disease. I personally, I don't have IBS, but I have another intestinal disease. I have celiac disease, which means I can't eat wheat or gluten. Found this out when I was about 8 months old, when they first started, feeding me solid food, and it's been something I've struggled with my whole life. I'm a little overweight. I haven't struggled that much, but it's inconvenient and sometimes it's troublesome. Now there's a whole gluten-free fad out there, and it's much easier to eat, which, people who are gluten-free who don't need to be, well, thank you. It makes it easier on me. So anyway, IBS. IBS is a tough one because, stomach problems can't be seen, and, we refer to them as stomach problems even though it's more than that. They can't be seen. It's hard to diagnose. Yeah, and it can be almost crippling to some people when you have to constantly be thinking about intestinal issues. So definitely a tough disease. Let's see, the next one here, Mr. Holmberg. Mr. Holmberg picked out HIV, and I'm glad somebody did this because I think HIV used to be talked about a lot. In the 80s and 90s, HIV was all over the place. We talked about it, we were scared of it, horrified of it. And as treatments have gotten better, people it's faded into the background, which it shouldn't. When HIV was first discovered, it was the first retrovirus in humans that we really focused on. We didn't know what we were looking for back in the 80s, when people just started suddenly dying of some really horrible complications to AIDS, usually different cancers associated with it. Or just a general breakdown in the immune system. So we didn't know what was going on. The disease was very, very scary. People were dying very quickly. And if you want to learn more about the history of HIV, there's a great movie that's pretty close to accurate called "And the Band Played On," made in the late 80s or early 90s. That kind of describes the original outbreak, shall we say, of HIV in the U.S. And you can trace HIV in the U.S. back to one person where it came into the U.S. We can do that, and it was really scary at the time. So at the time, and I'm going into the background a little bit too much, but it's often interesting to know the history of these things. It was associated, the disease was associated with gay males. Actually, before we even knew what the virus was, before we kind of discovered HIV, the disease was known as GRID, G-R-I-D, gay-related immune disorder. We didn't know what was causing this. We just knew it was spreading amongst gay males. And think about the early 80s, right? Homosexuality, gay people were not accepted in society. They were shunned. They were kind of put in a corner. and everyone was scared and scared of everything and scared of gay men, and they were going to spread this disease and kill everyone. And you know, it started in those populations, but it spread to a wider, to basically not everyone, but everyone. And now it's just generally out there in the population. We have better treatments for it. We haven't found a cure for it. We've never cured a virus, so the idea that we may cure HIV is a long shot. We found plenty of vaccinations for viruses and vaccines for viruses, so those are probably coming, and we're able to treat it, and people are living long lives. I mean, Magic Johnson was diagnosed a long time ago with HIV and has lived a pretty normal life. So HIV, it's out there. It'll probably still kill you, but people don't talk about it as much. I'm glad to see some HIV testing going on here on the Barton campus. It's one of those things that's kind of fading into the background because it doesn't kill people quickly anymore, so we've kind of forgotten about it. I don't know, kind of sad. All right. So moving on, Jameson here picked lymphoma, one of several people that picked lymphoma or leukemia, and they're related. They're both blood disorders or blood cancers, kind of. So lymphoma moves through the lymphatic system, I know. Leukemias are in the blood system. Yes, I know, but they're both neoplasms, and neoplasm is the fancy word for cancer, and they're both somewhat related. So leukemia and lymphoma are often researched together. You go see a hematologist, oncologist, you see the same type of doctor. They have similar etiologies, even though they're not the same disease. So both of them are tough diseases, mostly because we have a lymphatic system throughout our entire body. We have we have a blood flowing out throughout our entire body. So lymphoma and leukemias are easily spread. They get out, right? Small cancers in other areas, like you have a small lung cancer, it forms in your lung. If you get it early, it stays right in your lung. It doesn't metastasize to other areas. But lymphomas and leukemias, because they're being spread, or they're in a system that's throughout your entire body, they spread very quickly, and they're tough. They're tough neoplasms, often very tough to treat. Although we're getting better at it, and we're getting better at cancer treatment pretty quickly. Not often enough. My mother passed away at the age of 40 due to a multiple myeloma, which is a form of it's a form of leukemia, kind of. It's a blood marrow cancer. Now completely treatable. So we're coming across these treatments, often not fast enough for us, but we're getting there. So again, terrible diseases, but we're getting there. Hopefully we'll cure all diseases eventually. So moving on, Miss Thigpen, she picked out anemia, specifically sickle cell anemia, because she has a personal interaction with it. She has a friend with it. Sickle cell anemia, tough disease, and she does a great job. You, if you're listening to this, did a great job of explaining it, right? So on a simpler term, right, when you have a heart attack, a lot of times blood clots form and it gets in your heart and the vessels of your heart, and you have pain. Well, these same clots with people with sickle cell happen all over their body, so they have this wide systemic pain sometimes. There's not a lot of good ways to treat it, other than with hydration and get these things moving again, with palliative care, with pain medication. And I know they're experimenting with bone marrow transplants, and again, you highlighted this. You did a great job of explaining it, that yeah, we can possibly do a bone marrow transplant and basically kill every red blood cell in your body, put in new bone marrow that makes new red blood cells, and then make cells that are normally correctly shaped, whatever we want to call it. That's pretty radical treatment. Pretty invasive. People die during bone marrow transplants, but people die of sickle cell. And if you want to take the chance of living a life, if you have sickle cell and it's painful and it's debilitating, a lot of people want to take that chance. So sickle cell, it's a tough disease. It is one of those diseases that has a racial component. And if you go back and look at the history of sickle cell, you can tie it back to malaria. And there's reasons that it developed in the African populations because of malaria, and it's just one of those things. It just sucks, kind of. Yeah. All right, let's move on. So, who is next? Oh, Courtney did a great job again talking about leukemia, and really highlighting that a lot of times right here, finding out it's too late. Yeah, because it's spreading throughout your body very, very quickly. It's a tough one. Lymphomas and leukemia is very, very difficult. All right, Emily picked one, and I always screw up the pronunciation. Um, so, Emily, forgive me. All right, this one, there are words in the world that you just can't pronounce. This one always get me. So, lymphadenitis, infections of the lymph nodes. All right, not like cancers. When we're talking about lymphomas, we're talking about infections, and again, these infections spread very, very quickly throughout your body, because they're just getting through your lymphatic system, which is there to clean up stuff, and can cause long-term damage. And Emily did a great job of describing, some of these things, some of the treatments you can do. Some of them are kind of, I don't know, people watch them on YouTube, especially when you talk about incisions and draining out some of this stuff. But yeah, these things can harm you and can become very dangerous very quickly, just because they spread so quickly. You'll hear somebody talk about like an infection getting in the blood or the lymphatic system, and that's bad. Yeah, it sure is, because it spreads so very quickly. All right. Yasmin talked about strokes. Gosh, how do we forget strokes? And all of you picked out a disease, and they're all terrible, and no one forgot strokes, I know. But strokes are terribly debilitating. You either have a clot, or you have a vessel break in your brain. They cause two different types of strokes. They can react a little bit differently. Both of them are bad. It's easier to treat often now strokes caused by clots, because we, just like hearts, a lot of places are going in and cathing brains. We can go in and try to break up a clot in the brain if it's in a bigger vessel. So often thrombolytic strokes are easier to treat, but strokes can be incredibly debilitating, incredibly sad. They can kill somebody very quickly in the right place, or they can knock out small parts of the brain and change people and make life much more difficult for them and those around them. So strokes can be very sad at times. How do we fix them? We're getting there. We're treating them better, and really better health and better nutrition is all we can do for it. And good rehab if one does happen, because strokes are going to happen. So thank you for highlighting that. And the recognition, you pointed out the recognition for FAST and knowing what to do, and just, you can learn this in CPR class or whatever, just to be able to recognize, hey, maybe this is a stroke. Let's call 911. Let's get you to a stroke center as quickly as possible. Faith here talked about HIV, and I already mentioned that. Again, did a great thing, and a great presentation about this, kind of explaining it. And noting, by the way, once it turns to AIDS from HIV, once it really kind of invades your body, and you're starting to get rid of those T cells aren't working right, and all of a sudden you start popping up with Kaposi sarcomas and all these stranger cancers due to our immune system not working well. The life expectancy isn't very much, and often it's a pretty sad life for those last few years. But we're trying to treat it, and we're trying to get there. Right now, it's just extending the life with HIV as long as possible before people get to the AIDS stage. All right, we are almost to the bottom. Miss Packard talked about leukemia, and she talked about it especially in children, which is important, because a lot, cancer's sad in everyone, and leukemia is sad in everyone. But if you get leukemia and you're 111 years old, I don't mean this wrong, but you've lived a really good life. And if this is your first problem at 111 years old, well, yeah, right. It's very different when a 111-year-old person gets leukemia than a 4-year-old. And it's sad when a 4-year-old who's got their whole life ahead of them is all of a sudden struggling with this. And we're getting better at treating some of these childhood leukemias. Some are very treatable now, some are not. It depends on the type of leukemia and where it kind of started, and the genomes behind it all. We do all kinds of genome typing with leukemias now. But again, you did a great job of explaining and kind of highlighting that it's an important disease that we keep researching along with some of the other cancers. Tyree here talked about anemia, and just the not just sickle cell anemia, but just anemia in itself, where people don't have enough red blood cells, or you don't have enough iron in your red blood cells, you don't have enough hemoglobin, and it's not obvious on the outside why you are tired, why you're exhausted all the time, why things are hard. But if you're not moving enough oxygen around your blood, yeah, things can be real hard. Go run a marathon and then go try to do something. And that's what a lot of people with anemia are living with every day if they have severe anemia. And they're just exhausted all the time. And it's something that people, you don't notice because you can't see someone. A lot of people have anemia due to whatever other reason. And it's not like they're bleeding all over the place and losing their blood cells. They just don't have them, or they don't have enough hemoglobin. And it's tough. You can't see it. And it's often underdiagnosed because you can't physically see it. So it's a tough disease. All right, Miss Jackson talked about leukemia as well. Again, did a great job of highlighting it and highlighting some of the differences in leukemia. Fantastic job, like everyone else so far. And then Megan here. Megan talked about one of those diseases that we don't see a lot. I have only seen it maybe 2 or 3 times in my career. Hemophilia. Hemophilia, one of those diseases that you don't have the blood clotting factors in your blood, and when you start bleeding, it's hard to stop. And it seems like weird that people may die of a small cut, but it happens. Hemophilia is kind of famous because of the last czars in Russia and their hemophiliac children. I think just the son was there might have been a couple more that had hemophilia, but had to be very careful just because of the disease. And again, it's one of those ones that's hard to treat. We don't have a cure for it. We don't have a lot of medications for it. We can give people with hemophilia certain clotting factors in the hospital, but you don't want to have to go to the hospital every time that you get a minor cut. You cut yourself shaving, you won't stop bleeding. But yeah, so this can be debilitating for a lot of people. You can live with it, and hemophilia comes in levels, and it's kind of weird to say. Not everyone with hemophilia has the same level of clotting factor, the same level of not having clotting factors. So some people it's worse in than others. And again, a hidden disease that's often kind of tough to deal with and kind of treat. Laura picked out leukemia. I think I've highlighted that enough, but what's interesting here, 160 people each day. I don't know if that's the world or in the U.S. I'm not sure exactly where you got that one from. Honestly, I didn't go look at your citation here. Sorry, but that's a lot of people with leukemia or lymphoma every day. That's a lot, and it's something that we need to deal with, and it kind of sucks. So that's me rambling on for 20 minutes, but I think your presentations were great. I wanted to talk about them. So this week, do the discussion, watch the videos, do the assignments, and if you have any questions, as always, send me an email or come and see me, give me a phone call, whatever. So anyway, have a great day.